So the fourth homework then, very straightforward, all on software, not networks, as this says. So got some examples of different operating systems. Some are free and some aren't. So first job, explain what an operating system is, and that's just software that's designed to run on particular hardware and manages other programs' access to that hardware. Why do we need it? Well, we've got lots of different hardware devices that want to communicate with a computer system, and what it does is manages the input and output devices that are attached to the computer system, dealing with the software that's running. So you might have word processors running, web browsers, games that need to communicate with different hardware devices. So operating systems sit between the hardware and the programs. Other jobs of the operating system are managing the files in a directory structure, and they also provide the HCI that we see when we are working on the computer system. So that should give you three jobs of the operating system too. So we get GUI and the CLI. So graphical user interface would be our Windows icons, menu pointer, the Windows type interface that we're also accustomed to now, and command line interface is where we type commands in order to interact and give commands to a computer system and to communicate with the operating system, basically. So that tells us what a GUI and a CLI are. One difference between them both is obviously we use peripheral devices such as the mouse and the keyboard, and we interact with different icons and objects on the screen for a GUI, whereas a CLI we have to type out all our commands. So a GUI is best for, well, normally for kind of new users, and the CLI is better for advanced users. Explain why antivirus is utility software and not OS or application software. So utility software is software that does a specific job for the user that's not essential, but it's a very useful one. And it wouldn't be your reason for buying the computer in the first place, and it's not something that can be carried out by hand. So an operating system, remember, is one that communicates and allows communication between different hardware devices with backend storage and so on. Application software is a task that's not essential, but you could quite possibly carry it out by hand. Like a utility software would be a calendar program to write down days and dates you're going to do something. You could do that on paper. So that's why it's neither an operating system or application software. Other types of security software, we would have a firewall would be another type of software, encryption software, and antivirus, anti-spyware, and those are other examples of security software. Remember, those are different from file management tools. Computer models suggest that sea levels will rise to alarming levels if our current use of fossil fuels does not change. Explain what using simulation and modelling allows us to do in scenarios like this. Well, simulation and modelling allow us to ask what-if questions that we wouldn't be able to simulate in real life. For example, the only way to see what would happen in the real world to sea levels is to increase the average temperature of Earth. We couldn't do that. However, in a computer simulation, we can do that. And we can ask these what-if questions. So all about the simulation of that, there are problems with it. It's too complicated. The real world is too complicated for us to possibly try every different factor. We couldn't simulate every possible different scenario and situation. Other advantages, though, are that we can practice scenarios safely. So computer pilots can practice landing and taking off in really difficult conditions, rather than using a real plane and possibly risking their lives. So that flight simulator would allow them to practice in safe conditions. However, we've got another disadvantage in that the model might, or quite possibly will, include assumptions. So there's potential for the answers not being correct. For example, weather forecasting. But again, that's an example. Other advantages would be earthquake predictions. Obviously, early warning systems for things like earthquakes and tsunamis is obviously a really useful advantage of computer modelling. And number 5, file management tools such as a defragmenter provide useful tools for a computer system. Why should you run your defragmenting utility often? What improvements will we see in the computer system performance? Will you expect to see? Well, the defragmenter speeds up access to data stored on our hard disks and other backend storage devices. And when they're stored, they're not stored in one large chunk. We'll have lots of little sectors and clusters that can be spread out across the disk. And because they're fragmented, because they're all not contiguous, it can be slower to access them. So what a defragmenter does is moves the files around so that the files are all closer together. And that's really only for specific type of drives. For example, magnetic disk drives, because solid state flash drives don't require any defragmentation, as the access times are the same anyway. Other examples of file management tools, we have backup tools that would allow us to create backup copies of files in case something happens to our original. We could have compression tools as well to reduce the size of files in order to free up more disk space as well. Security software protects us from other malicious software. Give 3 examples of utility software which provides security on a computer system. So I think that one's actually already been covered. So antivirus, anti-spyware, and a firewall we could put for those. 7, operating systems perform many jobs allowing communication with hardware devices. What is meant by scheduling and what is meant by paging? Now remember, this is to do with how we get the idea that a computer system is carrying out more than one job at the same time when it only has one processor. So this is the process of having that appearance that 2 things are happening at the same time. So scheduling is an algorithm that the operating system uses to allow time for different applications to run concurrently. So scheduling gives each of them a bit of processor time, and it's the operating system that swaps those jobs in and out of the processor, giving them a bit of the processor's time to allow them to execute. Paging is a bit different, and that's an algorithm again that the operating system uses to take a program from RAM to save it to hard disk and then back again. Now that's usually called virtual memory as well, where we move things that would usually be in RAM if we had enough space into back-end storage in order to free up room for other programs and instructions to be executed in the processor when we run out of RAM.